Welcome back. I am Multeyemeteor and this is Magic 2013. Now, if you've watched some of my recent videos, I made a bit of a goof up, as they say. Hold on, let me just check if the... Nah, never mind. I made a bit of a mistake in saying that there's only two kinds of ramps in the DLC. Of course, the Sepulchral Strength is ripe with them. There's, of course, the Civic Wayfinder in Collective Might. And there is the, let's go find it. I believe it's the only one. Yeah, well, I don't count Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds because they don't ramp up your deck. They just go find those lands for you and clutter up your deck. But aside from that, let's see. Let me just jump to it. Here we have it, the Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. It's a 4-cost, 2/3 white spells you cast cost 1 colorless less than blue spells the same. Spells your opponents cast cost 1 colorless more. So it's not only a ramp, it's also a bit of a cock blocker for your opponent. Aside from that, that's the only one. That's the only thing that you do that you can get on table or play to ramp up your spells in the Aura Servants deck, and that's just one card, which is a legendary creature, so you wouldn't even be able to run several of them at the same time. It is pretty significant, except that different from this deck is different from a lot of the other DLC decks in the sense that it doesn't have a lot of dual colored cards or spells that it runs. Let me see. I think okay, that's one. That's see. There's a lot of white spells, a lot of blue spells. Here are the 3 Talent Troopers. That's 4. There's the Aven Mimeomancer, that's 5. And that's about it well, amongst the cards that I don't run. Let's just take a quick gander here at, yeah, there's nothing there. Let's see. I think I run a Mimeomancer, a single one. Yep, that's 6. The Geist of Saint Traft is the 7th. We have Hannah, Ship's Navigator, with that beautiful artwork. That's number 8. We have the Grand Arbiter Augustine IV itself, but it can't ramp itself. But that is the 9th card. And we have a couple of Sovereigns of Lost Alara. So that's 11 altogether, which is not a lot, especially considering that I'm only running, I think there was about 5 of them. And as I said, the Grand Arbiter can't ramp itself, so that's just one ramp in a single deck, and one single ramp in a single build, so that's not a lot. Let's skip forward. Now let's go take a look at the Golgari deck. Let me quickly browse through it. Okay, in the Golgari deck, or the Sepulchral Strength deck, you have the Yavimaya Dryad, which is a 3-cost 2/1 Forest Walk. When Yavimaya Dryad enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a forest card. It doesn't ramp up your swamps, but it ramps up your forest. Put it onto the battlefield tapped under target player's control. If you do, shuffle your library. It's pretty standard, but it's a good enough card, I would say. It's except that it has for the fact that it has Forest Walk, it's pretty similar to the Civic Wayfinder. Pretty cool. You have 4 Yavimaya Elders that you can play. It's all of them are 3 costs, of course, 2 1s as well. And when the Yavimaya Elder dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Not on the table, tapped, but into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. And you may sacrifice it yourself, so it's and draw a card, so that's pretty good. That's very, very decent. You get a chance to both get 2 lands and draw a card, which may be a 3rd land, but it also might be a lot of different other things. So that's a nice way of ramping up and hastening your deck a little bit. Plus, the artwork is incredible. Aside from that, you have the Where do we have her? We have a couple of Oracle of Muldeyemeteor, which are 4 cost 2/2s. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. So that's another ramp spell or another ramp creature. All of the ramps in this deck are creatures, by the way. So that is pretty amazing. Oh wait, there might also be another one. Let me just bounce back, see if I can find... maybe not. So, in my build, I included a couple of Viridian Emissaries, which are awesome. 2 cost, 2/1s, and when they die, you may search your library for a basic land card. So that's actually, so far we're up to... we have the Dryad, we have the Elder, that's 4 of those, so that's 5. We have 2 Oracles of Muldeyemeteor, and we have 2 Viridian Emissaries. So far that's 5 possible ramps. And I think there might be another one. I'm not entirely sure. No, maybe that's not in this deck. But yeah. Hold on. Just quickly let me go through the deck and make sure, because I thought there might be another one. Nope, those are it. So that's the Golgari deck. Let me just make entirely sure. Yeah, let's jump ahead. So here we have the Niv-Mizzet deck, or the Izzet deck, sorry, Mindstorms, which, as you can see on the mana curve, it's quite clunky, and there's no 1 cost, there's certainly no 0 cost. And are there any mana ramps? Well, let me just look through it. So the Mindstorm deck actually doesn't have any ramps at all, not a single one, which is kind of unfortunate in my opinion. But it does have a lot of card drawing abilities and effects, which might do the same trick for you. But keep in mind, those are fairly expensive. They start at 3 cost. So you have the Cerebral Vortex. Target player draws 2 cards, and then Cerebral Vortex deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards he or she has drawn this turn. That's 2 cards if you play it in your own turn, and if you play it in your opponent's turn. 2 cards and 3 points of damage in your own turn, and 2 cards and 2 points of damage if you play it in your opponent's turn, at least if you target yourself, that is. There's the compulsive research. There's a possibility of running 3 of them, where you draw 3 cards and then you discard 2 cards unless you discard a land card. Well, that's again kind of against, it works against the whole purpose of trying to get lands, at least if you're trying to ramp yourself up a little bit, unless you drew 3 lands or 2 lands and something good. You have the Invoke the Firemind, which is vastly, incredibly expensive. I would never use it to draw cards unless there was some kind of, unless I had Niv-Mizzet the Firemind down, or some other effects that gained from drawing cards, because it costs 4 mana to draw 1 card, and plus 1 mana for every card beyond that you want to draw. So that's fairly expensive. You have, and you have 2 of those. You have the Quicksilver Dagger, which you have 2 of as well, which is a Timothy effect that draws you a card every time you tap a creature to deal damage to a player. Also a little bit clunky in my opinion. Then you have, you have a way to get rid of your islands and mountains, which is quite the opposite. You have this guy, which is sort of a ramp, I guess, and it's a Gin of Wishes. It's a 5 cost 4/4, and comes in with 3 wish counters on it. You can, for 4 mana, remove a wish counter from the Gin of Wishes, reveal the top card of your library, and you may play that card without paying its mana cost. If you don't exile it, yeah, I guess that's sort of a ramp. You have the Prophetic Bolt that lets you look at the top 4 cards of your library and put 1 in your hand. You have and you have a couple of those. You have tidings, which makes you or let you draw 4 cards. You have I don't think, no, that's not it. You have the Mind Rack Leash, which is sort of a ramp as well, because you may put a blue or red creature card from your hand onto the battlefield for 4. And you have the Sphinx of Magosi that for 3 mana lets you draw a card. I don't think there's anything else there. Nope. There's the Electrolyze, which deals 2 damage divided as you so see fit for 3 and lets you draw a card. That's sort of a ramp, but not necessarily a land ramp or a mana ramp. You have, let's see, you have the more prophetic bolts. You of course have the Spellbound Dragons, which lets you draw a card every time they attack, but also lets you discard a card. But that certainly makes you cycle through your library a bit quicker. You have Time Warp, which automatically gains you another card, but you have to be at land drop 5. The same with Cloudbound, Spellbound Dragon. That's it. They've missed the Firemind as well, lets you draw a card, and there's the Sphinx of Jawar Island, which doesn't let you draw anything, but may let you look at the top card of your library. I think, in my opinion, and I've talked about this in my Unleashing the Draco Genius video, that the Mindstorms deck, it kind of gets the brunt, or it gets the shortest stick in this equation. It is a very expensive deck, and I've taken out the most of the expensive cards. I think I've taken out almost all the expensive cards. The most expensive card I run is Niv-Mizzet the Firemind, which is a 6 cost. Then you have Living Inferno, which is 8 cost. I don't run any of those. Same with Insurrection. The Thunder Dragons, which are 7 cost, don't run any of those. Then you have Sphinx of Magosi, which is a 6 cost. Don't run that. 6 cost Mind Rack Leash. Don't run that. Don't run the Horde Smelter Dragon, 6 cost as well. And you have 2 Conquering Manticores, which are 6 costs. Lots of 5 costs as well, which I don't run, and some which I do run. I run 10 5 costs, and there's still 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, did I? No. 5, I think. Yeah, 5 more. So there's 15 5 costs altogether. It's a very expensive card or deck to run, and I try to keep my build as light as possible, but still, it's very, very expensive. You don't have anything to ramp you up. Of course, you have some cycling effects that make you go through your deck quicker, but not something that stays with you. Not any kind of mana gaining board positioning or board presence, or what do you want to call it. So yeah. That is, I think that is a really, really poorly built deck, in my opinion. I think they should have done something to ramp it up a little bit. For example, you could have put one one sapphire, what's it called? Medallion, and one a ruby medallion into the deck. Just one of each. That would have certainly helped the deck out. There's lots of both blue spells, red spells, and dual color spells that would have gained from that, and it would have made the deck much better. There's also, I forget the name of it, but I mentioned it in my Unleashing the Draco Genius deck. There's I think Return to Ravnica, or a Guild Pack card, which is a goblin. I think a 2/2 that makes your spells and in your instants and sorceries 1 colorless cheaper. That would certainly also help this deck out a lot. Anyways, let's head back. Then we have the Grinning Malice deck, and the Grinning Malice deck, let's take a look at it. The Grinning Malice deck is quite the destroyer, but not so much the builder. It has the Wrecking Ball, it destroys lands, and I think it also has a few other effects that does the trick. It has a very expensive staple of cards, which I do not run. And it also, like, my build is very light on the feet. As you see, I only have 3 6 costs or more, and aside from that, I run a lot of low cost or medium range costs. The closest thing you have to a ramp in this deck is not a ramp, but it can be in a certain situation. That's the Chaos Warp. If you sacrifice a creature or if you bounce a creature back to your library, and if you're lucky enough to draw a land. So that's the only ramp that there is in this deck. Aside from that, lots of its creatures have a lot of value for its low cost. So it's actually not the I wouldn't say it's the deck that suffers the most from not having too many ramp spells, and as I've said before, there are certainly some ramps in some of the deck. Golgari is really like it's riddled with ramp spells. Although it is, in my opinion, the deck that I've tested which had the most trouble gaining the right amount of lands to begin with. So yeah, there's that. But the Grinning Malice is actually probably very successful because it has a lot of low cost, very effective spells and creatures. So yeah, let's skip ahead. Finally, we come to Collective Might, which is the green-white deck, for those of you who don't know. Let's just take a look at it. So yeah, you have the Civic Wayfinder, which is a 3-cost 2/2. When it hits the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. That is pretty standard, and we've seen it before. You have 2 of them, the option to run 2 of them at least. You also have something else. You have, where do we have it? You have the Pale Recluse, or Recluse, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's a 6-cost, 4/5, but it does have forest cycling and plain cycling, which actually made me consider running it just for that. But I wasn't too impressed with it aside from it. I'm still on the fence whether or not I should run it, but it might be good in your starting hand, but aside from that, I feel it's a cheap excuse for trying to trying to make the mana work when you should have just made made the algorithm for counting how many lands to put into the deck much better. So you didn't end up with a situation like this: 60 card decks with only 20 lands. Yeah. So basically, you only have these 3 possibilities of running ramp cards in the Collective Might deck, and that's a bit of a shame. But then again, it's a pretty light deck. I run mine with 4 1-drops, 14 2-drops, and 8 3-drops, and so on. Not too many expensive cards in the build. And you see, I have a lot of effects like Sprout. I have a cheap removal. I have a Fist of Ironwood, and let's see, like a lot of cheap creatures that will get me going from very early on. Bunch of combat tricks as well, and from there on, there's a lot of cheap spells within the range of the 1, 2, 3 drop range. But aside from that, I think it's a bit of a shame that this deck is getting gypped as well, because it's very strong, very effective, unless you get mana screwed. And there's there's a big chance of you getting mana screwed, although it's not it is not one of the decks that doesn't have any ramp at all. It does have that, but I'm running it without any kind of ramp, because I don't think that the Pale Recluse and Civic Wayfinder helps me in any other way. I think as soon as the Civic Wayfinder is down on the table, I kick myself for running it, because it's not very good. It's a 2/2 for 3, and it does go get me a land, but it doesn't even put the land on the table. It brings the land to my hand. So I would much rather run the Dryad from the Golgari deck that puts a forest directly into play. So yeah, I think in that sense, this deck would have benefited a lot from the Yavimaya Elder, the Yavimaya Dryad, the Viridian Emissary. But yeah, I guess you can't get everything, if anything. So yeah, what have we learned? Well, we've learned that some of the DLC decks are pretty poorly constructed in terms of mana and mana ramps and so on. It's staggering to me that you have nothing aside from the Evolving Wilds and the Terramorphic Expanse in terms of non-basic lands. Well, you do have a few in the Exalted Darkness. Well, you have one kind of a special land in Exalted Darkness, which also gives you colorless, but it also gives you Exalted. I think that Wizards would have or the decks would have gained a lot from the creators of the game having if they had decided to put in some dual colored lands or put in creatures or artifacts or so on that would consistently give you lands. For example, I remember playing with the Llanowar elves back when I played Paper Magic and Birds of Paradise and stuff like that. I don't see how that would make any of the decks way too powerful. I don't see that at all, and I for the life of me, I can't understand why Wizards chose not to use any kind of ramp. I would definitely, I mean, like I could definitely see the black running some kind of sacrifice effect where you could sacrifice creatures and gain a couple of or one or several black manas and yeah, there must be like, for example, blue bouncing stuff back to your hand, and in return you get blue mana or something like that. Like I don't see why you can't have spells and effects like that, because it's certainly there in Paper Magic, and it's very helpful to make the decks run much smoother. So yeah, I don't see why you can't do that, and it's a bit of a shame. I think I might make a, yeah, I will definitely show you in a separate video, just quickly, what the mana ramp situation are for the 10 original decks from this format, to show you how they work around it and how monocolored decks have been favored in that sense. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm multeyemeteor, and I hope you enjoyed it. Laters.